Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another Knowledge is Power Podcast Live podcast. And with my host, LaDonna Sherwood, and where's my other host? Where is she? Oh, what? There we go. All right, I got
Hey,
everybody here
hey.
now. All right, okay. So, any PSAs we need to talk about before we get to speaking to our special guest tonight is Dr. Richard Price, and we're going to talk about the history of the Pear Orchard historical Pear Orchard district and the birth of the famous Hebert High School. So now that I have got that out the way, let's go here and let's start what we always do if we don't have any PSAs. What we do? Let's
We
talk
do,
about
we do. I was going to
yes.
say, we do have one. Of course, I'm going to be hosting the Get Out the Vote effort every Wednesday in March. We're going to be at Nell's Sports Bar and Grill. That's 2820 Washington Boulevard. This week, we have LaShawn Proctor, who's going to be on Wednesday answering your questions and discussing his platform. And I'm super excited about that. I'll send you the flyer so near the end maybe you can plug that in, but we have that. And then we do have Justice of the Peace Naomi Doyle that was telling people about the rent relief program, so we want to make sure that we're plugging that in. There are monies for both landlords and tenants to get help so that you can stay in your place a little bit longer. And Knowledge is Power is where you can get all that information. And that's the TexasRentRelief.com, or you can call 1-833-9TX-RENT. That's 1-833-989-7368. And they're helping with that. And we got a very important election season coming up. We want to make sure that we're plugging in. Early voting starts April 19th, I think. We want to make sure that everybody's getting out the vote. So those are our PSAs for now. And Knowledge is Power, is hosting in conglomeration with other podcasts on April 3rd. We're going to have all the candidates together and do a bit of a forum. But yeah, Tony, put that back up. Knowledge is
I
power.
am, but I want to make sure we let them know that our guest on Tuesday night on Knowledge is Power podcast is Ward Ford candidate Chris Durio. And
Okay.
on Thursday at 8 o'clock on Knowledge is Power podcast, we're going to have the incumbent, well, not incumbent, but Robin Mouton, who is also is a candidate for mayor. And on Sunday, of course, we're going to have LaShawn Proctor.
Right.
So we've got a full slate for the month of March, but we wanted to take a break in all this politics and just relax and learn a little history because it's part of our program as well.
Right. And Knowledge is Power Podcast Live is a platform to share important information by educating Southeast Texas African American communities with valuable information on health, education, finances, politics, and business. And honey, we pride ourselves on keeping our hand on the pulse of the community, making sure you know what is going on in and around the Golden Triangle. And we are super excited about our guest tonight. Dr. Price is going to give us a historical perspective on the Pear Orchard, and we are super excited.
I can't wait too. So also, Knowledge is Power podcast is heard over 21 social media platforms. For example, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Apple, iTunes, and Google Play. And if you are watching us on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe. Tap on it and subscribe to us. Okay. Now let's bring on our guests, Dr. Richard Price, right after this 30-second intro. All right. Welcome to Knowledge is Power Podcast Live with your host, Tony Redfro, and my co-hosts, LaDonna Sherwood and Francis Lawkins.
Knowledge is Power Podcast Live starts now.
Well, hello, Dr. Price.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Oh, that's Dr. Richard Price, everybody. He's joining us tonight as we talk about the historical Pear Orchard District here in Beaumont, Texas, along with his daughter Delisa, Fusely, I'm sorry, and my co-host Donna Sherwood Haley, and Francis Larkin. So let's bring the show on to the doctor. Let us talk about Doc. Tell everybody. Everybody know who you are, but gotta tell them who you are right now.
Okay, I'm a product of the Pear Orchard community. Went to Hebert High School, and after graduation from there, went on to Morehouse College, and then drafted into the Army for the Korean War in 1951, discharged in 53, returned to, not returned, then my daddy suggested that I go to Prairie View in 53, graduated in 55 with the degree in mathematics, went straight to the University of Texas at Austin, received a master's degree in mathematics in 58, and went to several other schools, including Iowa State, including UCLA, uh, ended up back at Ohio State where I got the PhD. Uh, Joined the faculty at Lamar in 1970 and 71, took a leave of absence in order to study religion at Yale Divinity School. And, excuse me?
I'm sorry. I was just saying, wow.
She was just saying, wow.
Wow. And then returned to Lamar in the mathematics department and stayed there for 36 years. And a couple other studies done at Rice University on the campus. I never had a class in online teaching. I had to be physically present in all my studies. Separated from Lamar in 2006, and 2 months later, the principal at Ozan, Mr. James Broussard, asked me to come over and to do some advanced calculus classes. I did that for 7 years until 2013. And since 2013, I'm just up and about, riding my bicycle every day, enjoying life, and so be it until now.
Wow.
How
Yeah.
many years of is that total teaching? How many years have you been teaching? We need to know.
Oh, I never kept count of the numbers. It's at least 50 years. I'm sure I didn't reach 56, but over 50 years in the
Wow.
classroom.
So tell us a little bit about the historical Pear Orchard District. Where did the settlement start? What year or where did it start?
Okay, if you're talking about school wise, I can remember, and this is before my time, but before there was a Hebert High School, my father went to Charlton Powers on
Right.
Grant Street. In fact, he graduated from there. His sister, younger sister, graduated from Charlton Powers the same year as my father. That was in 1916. My father was not the valedictorian. His sister, Lula, Lula Rogers, was the valedictorian. Dad was the salutatorian. And from there, he went to Prairie View. And from there, Prairie View sent him to Tuskegee. He studied under George Washington Carver.
Wow.
But he came back to Beaumont on hearing of the divorce of his parents. So he came back to build a home for his mother right across the street from the old Hebert High School in the Pear Orchard at the corner of Sarah and USAN. And in fact, the lot that's right across from what was the primary grade is still in the Price family name. And I was deposited on that campus. I guess it must have been around 1937 or 38. Jumped a ditch in order to get to my first grade teacher. And at that time, you went from grade 1 through grade 12, all on that one campus, surrounded by Sarah, Leela, USAN, and I think the other street in the back was Paradise. But all 12 grades on that one campus.
Was it that wooden building? It started at that wooden building on the corner of Sarah and I guess as you said, that back corner.
I heard, yes, that there was a wooden building that had been built. Well, the land had been donated by the Blanchards and maybe the Heberts,
Right.
because those are two prominent names that always come up in the Black community. And there was a wooden building. No one was able to tell me precisely where that building was located. And because the building that I went in when I was there, that school was built in 1922.
Okay, that's the red brick building.
That's the red brick
Brick
building.
building, yes.
When you got to high school, you went into that building. Primary was a separate building. Uh, then third and fourth grade was a second building. And then sixth and seventh and eighth was another building. And then you went to the high school in the red brick building.
Now tell me what year was that? That was in with 35?
I started there in 30, I think 30, 37 or 38.
Okay, what was it like living in, what was it like in the Pear Orchard? Because, I'm a South End boy.
Well, was a totally Black community. Back in those days, I never saw any white person in the Pear Orchard community. Now, the first inkling that we got that there was such a people as white people at the beginning of the school year, when we got our textbooks, they were used. They had a lot of green coloring on them, and they had names that no Black youngster would recognize. That means that those textbooks had been sent from South Park High School. We got their discarded textbooks. We got their discarded uniforms. I remember one semester we started off.
I have a question.
Wait, hold on.
Was the Pear Orchard considered an affluent neighborhood, or was it upper middle class? Or tell me about the class of people that were in the Pear Orchard.
Okay, a very close-knit group. It's hard to say about classes because there wasn't but one class.
Mm-hmm.
We were all in the same boat. We did not
Okay.
distinguish between this class and that class. Everybody had the same dirt streets, ditches on both sides of the street. We would clean out the ditches once or twice a year. That was done by the Price Board with shovels. But there was no distinction as to class. Everybody knew there was a concept of a white group of people across the railroad track on the east side of the city, but had no direct contacts with them. We attended our own Black theater on Forsyth Street, the Star Theater.
Mm-hmm.
We had our own dentist, Dr. Melton on both sides, the pharmacist, Dr. White on both sides. And so we just did not know about white people. My daddy, I remember him taking me to town one time. It was in his one of his cars, and we went to a bank, and I saw other white people going up and making out some kind of note and giving it to the bank a teller, and the teller would issue some money. So when we got back to the car, I said, Daddy, how come you didn't do like them other people and pull out a piece of paper and get some money? Lester, when you grow up, you will know why that is not so. And so he did not teach us. I'm glad he did not. He taught us what he wanted us to know, which is how to dig down, study, throw papers every day, had paper routes, a garden on each side of the house. We produced our own vegetables. We had 2 cows for milk. He would milk them in the morning. And so we were self sufficient in our location.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the reason why he never sent any of his children to a white school. Boy number one, he sent to Bishop College. Boy number two, he sent to uh, Texas College. Boy number three, he sent to Morehouse College. Boy number four, he sent to Morehouse College. I'm boy five, he sent to Morehouse College. Girl one, he sent to Spelman. Girl two, he sent to Antioch College up in Ohio. Girl three, he sent to Spelman. And somewhere right after that he had become a principal of Hebert High School in 47. That's when I was in the ninth grade. And he died in 59. And when he died, that's when several of the children said, okay, I'm switching from this school to that school. And but he had us all locked into a curriculum, a,
Yeah.
a curriculum at home, a curriculum for school, a curriculum when you're not at school. So all we knew was to go from one curriculum, one assignment to the next.
Well, Dr. Hebert, I'm sorry, Dr. Price, I'm so sorry. I do want to ask questions about how the land was derived, to kind of give me, because I'm not from Beaumont. Obviously, I'm not from the Pear Orchard. I heard you mention Hebert and Blanchett. And how was the land that you guys?
Those two families own a lot of acres of land in the Pear Orchard community,
Yes, sir.
and they donated that land to the school district on the ground that a school would be built at that time for colored youngsters.
Okay.
Were these
So I
colored
take it they were
people?
African American.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say, were these black families?
Yes, black families. There was the Blanchetts and the Heberts.
The Blanchetts and the Heberts.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, a lot of the streets in and around that school, like Leela,
Hmm.
Sarah, Usan, uh,
Bob,
Bob, Marie,
Sarah.
those are named after the
Sure.
Hebert and Blanchett family to this
Oh,
day.
wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So, Doctor,
Yeah,
you
I'm sorry.
said,
I have a ton of
okay, go
questions.
ahead.
So tell me what was the population in that
Oh,
time?
oh, child. We didn't live by population. We lived by what was our map for that day. Yeah. The only reason why, especially the boys, got to know as much about Beaumont as they did, because all 5 boys had paper routes.
Hmm.
And as they would graduate, that paper route was passed on to the other brother or to 2 brothers. But population wise, I don't have the slightest idea.
Now, let me ask you this because I heard you say that all of the children that graduated basically went to college. Was that a known thing in the Pear Orchard? Did a bunch of the students graduate and go to college, or was that just affluent families, or how did the college thing work?
I hate to use the concept of affluent families because we were all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
But there were certain families, like the Sprats, of course, they were on the north side of Beaumont, near the old
Mm-hmm.
Sprat Hospital. And there were other families, and the Heberts was a very educated family, but their parents had donated the land. Ooh, I don't know. I'm sure there were, but I
Well,
don't.
Dr. Price, what your dad graduated from Hebert, and his
No,
siblings.
he
I'm sorry,
graduated.
I'm sorry, Charlton Pollard on Grant Street. That's what I meant. I'm
Yes.
sorry, and his siblings graduated from Charlton Pollard. So you all did not settle in the South End.
Oh, we never lived in the South End.
Mm-hmm. Y'all
When
always lived in the Parachute.
always the parity. When I was born, it was on Leela Street, going towards from the high school, going towards uh, the east side of
Mm-hmm.
the city, and about a block away from the railroad track.
Were there actually pear trees in the Pear Orchard?
Was there what?
Pear trees.
Patrick, child, I have heard of that. I have
Because we
not
need to
seen
know.
a
We keep on
pear tree.
wondering why is it called the Pear Orchard if what were the pear trees?
Now I heard that there were pear trees on the east side of the railroad tracks, but on the west side of the railroad tracks, we had fig trees. And so even today, there are some families that still have a history of preserving figs.
Figs.
But my parents, everything we grew, tomatoes, bell pepper, onions, okra, watermelons, you name it.
Well, did y'all have any fig preserves?
Yes.
Oh yes, my mother did fig preserves. My daddy was the main preserver,
Okay.
but my mother and father was all. Whenever one was working on a project, they were working as one.
Mm.
So no pear trees on our side of the
I
Pear
don't
Orchard.
remember pear tree number one.
I know, Doc. I believe you, Doc. I did. I'm again. I'm a South End boy, but my parents moved in '59 to the Pear Orchard, and as of today, I have not seen a pear tree yet. But so tell me, so your dad lived in the Pear Orchard, and
Yes.
he walked. I mean, did he walk all the way to the South End to Charlton Pollard, or he just? How was that? Because it wasn't a Hebert school until 1922.
Now, son, you going back? Okay, I can remember as a little toddler. No, my father had some some kind of old some kind of a Ford where you had to crank it. Yeah, I remember
Oh.
sometime in the morning I would go out there and do the cranking part. But back then there was no daddy. Let me use the car to go somewhere. You didn't ask to use the car. There was no television, so you didn't ask for television. There was one phone. I never used the first time I used the phone. I made an error. I've got to tell you about that. That was on Leela Street. and there was a Mr. T.T. Pollard from the old
Yes.
Pollard, and he and my daddy were very good educators and good friends. And one morning, Professor Pollard called, and Daddy knew it was him. And he said, "Professor, answer the phone and tell him I'm gone." So I answered the phone and said, "Mr. Pollard, Daddy said he's gone." That was my first conversation on the telephone.
Yeah. Okay, I think he's froze up a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Let's see here. We can get him back here. I'm really enjoying that. Let's see, Delisa, can you probably refresh his page, please? Hey, I was really enjoying our history because there we go. He's refreshed. There we go. Okay, we back. Yes. Kind
All
of
right.
froze up a little bit, but we're back. So let's back to what you were saying.
Just a conversation that,
Yeah, I can't remember what we was talking about, but
Yeah.
uh,
He
I-
was saying that he said daddy said he's gone.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
that was my first conversation on the telephone.
Mm.
You see, back then it was a party line.
Yes.
Mhm.
And,
I grew up with the party line.
oh, you know what that is.
Yes, sir, I do.
They would call our house on Leela Street, and I would have to go up the street as much as 3 blocks because somebody wanted to speak to a neighbor, and the neighbor had to come down to our house on that party line.
Yes.
Sometimes Daddy would get on the phone and somebody else would already be on there, and Daddy would say, "Can I get on the phone? I need to make a quick call." And the other people were, very respectful.
Mm-hmm.
Would release the line because only one person could talk at a time on that line.
So in the Pear Orchard, and I know it crosses the track on Washington Boulevard and goes back to maybe Carter Drive, but at that time it didn't go back to Carter Drive. It was just a little old country dirt road with ditches on both sides, right?
Ditches on every street, no pave, no gutters,
Nothing.
nothing. Uh, all of this were even 4th Street. Well, going west, we knew about Zumo because that we call that Tripe City.
Right.
Now, if there was such a thing as class, as a young lady was asking a few moments ago, yes, if you lived near Zumo, you were called Tripe City. Now, that was a lower class. That was the lowest of all the classes. From Tripe City.
I got quite a few friends from that lived in Tripe City, and and I knew why they called it Tripe City because Zumos was my grandfather worked at Zumos, and they would throw the wasted meat out to the back, and they would get the wasted meat that wasn't used, and that's why I called it tripe.
Yeah, and of course they slaughtered cattle at Zumos.
Right,
On
right.
the paper route early in the morning. Yeah, I can see those cattle being brought down the chute, and a guy with a big old maul hammer
Oh.
at some moment hit him across the head and then drop it into a big vat of boiling water.
Oh no.
Oh yes. And another thing on that Tri City, I can remember when I came back to visit my parents before going to Korea, which means 51. And my father said, "Son, I'm going to take you and show you where we're going to build a new school." And he took me on Finette, which is what the grounds is of now Beaumont United. He said, "On these grounds, we're going to build the new Hebert High School." And I said, Daddy. He said, what, son? Fessa, he called us all Fessa. I said, this is Tri City. We're going to build a school in Tri City. And he said to me, son, in years to come, this is going to be a focal point for the Black community.
Wow.
And another reason we wanted to build that school on that spot, see, that was before Interstate 10, but white people in the summer, they would be heading to the beach, and they had to all come down Fournette Street, right where it forks with Pear's barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
He said white people gonna have to come by Fournette, and if they see the school, I'm sure in years to come, they're not gonna let this school go down because they're looking at it every weekend in the summer. And that's why he chose that ground for that school, new school.
Wow.
So your dad was the principal at that time of Hebert High School when
He said,
they bought that land. Now, was that land there donated as well?
I did not ask him. I'm thinking that the school district, because the superintendent at that time was Mr. Vincent. The Vincent Middle School is named after him. And my brother and I used to go and cut Mr. Vincent's grass in the summer every weekend. But my dad was considered the right hand man for Mr. Vincent in the conduction of the Black community. So I'm thinking that the school board approved of the purchase of that land because my dad asked him. And my dad, because of Mr. Vincent, could get most, whenever he wanted something, he went through Mr. Vincent.
Mm-hmm. Who was the superintendent of
Who
South Park
was the
School District at the time?
Yes.
Right. So now when so that wasn't a what we call a junior high school, what they call it middle schools now, but that wasn't one there at that time, was it?
Mm, no, I remember it was the autumn because when they built the new school on Fournette, Odom came over and took one wing of that new building, and Hebert High School took the east end, and Odom took the west end. That's why the school was built kind of on a symmetrical basis. Uh,
Right.
you saw to the right, you saw to the left.
Right. Wow. Francis, got another question you want to ask?
Oh my goodness, I have tons of questions. So, you're saying what is currently now Beaumont United was Hebert High School, correct?
Was originally Hebert High School until what 1982, I think it was, when the Judge Parker uh, made a ruling because the superintendent was trying to keep the schools separate, and
Mm-hmm.
we had to go to court. And Judge Parker said, when we told Judge Parker in court that we did not have a plan, Judge Parker called uh, a recess in the hearing and told the school board, which included me, to go back to your places and take a vote on what you want to do about Hebert High School. And we went back, and at that time I was superintendent. I can't think of Taylor.
Taylor, Mike Taylor.
Mike Taylor.
That's right.
Mike Taylor, okay, suggested that we close down Hebert and let all the youngsters go to Forest Park. And I stood up at that meeting, and in essence, I said, white people If they don't like a school, they can go to Vida, they can go to Lumberton, they can go to Hardin Jefferson, they can go to Silsbee. I said, but black people cannot fly, which means that black people, there will always be a need for a school in the Pear Orchard community.
Mm-hmm.
So when we took that back to Judge Parker, Parker said, okay, I'm going to let the 9th and 10th grade, I'm going to combine these two schools, uh, get you a new color, and the 9th and 10th grade will go on Finette, and the 11th and 12th grade will go to Forest Park.
Hmm.
And 1 year after I left the board, soon after I was elected to the board for the first time, within 3 months, Ed Moore, who was a commissioner,
Mm-hmm.
the Ed Moore Highway is named in his honor. Ed Moore came to me. He said, Doctor, you will only be a trustee for one term. I said, how you know that, Tom Boy? He said, because I have talked with those people out in the West End, and they don't like your philosophy. And sure enough, at that time, all seats were open at large, whatever
Right.
you call it. And they put a white lady on to challenge me, and she won. And so the district went back to being all white
Right.
at the school. And the first thing that they did, they took the 10th grade that was at Hebert and sent them over to Forest Park, and that only left Hebert with the 9th grade.
Wow.
And that's how it became Westbrook.
And
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and that was the beginning of Westbrook.
Now, was Westbrook location where it currently is today? That was pretty
Yes.
far for people to be bused.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, before it was Westbrook, they had a school on where Amelia is, where Vincent is. Where's
Yes.
Vincent.
Right. That's Major Drive.
Vincent was the high school for whites at that time.
Right.
Wait a minute.
No, Vincent was always in middle school.
No. Vincent, no.
It used to be a high school.
It
It
was
was
the high
called North
school.
Forest. That's it. That's it.
North Forest.
Oh,
North
really?
Forest, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Now, when they decided to build Westbrook, at that time, the prevailing philosophy was, you see where Westbrook is located,
Right.
build it where black people won't even know how to find it.
Well,
Right.
you can barely find it now. Hell, I have a hard time.
Well, that was in 1968 when they built the school present location, because they built John P. Oldham Middle School the same way, with same design, no
I
windows.
never
Remember?
understood why it was hidden like that.
Why what?
I never understood why it was positioned the way that that school, Vincent Middle School, why it was ducked
No,
off that way.
no, we're talking about where Westbrook is now.
Oh,
It was once Forest Park. They built it behind the. It was nothing out there, but just
Nothing out there
nothing.
but rice fields.
Right.
really?
Right.
Rice fields.
There was
Wow.
nothing there. It was still called Forest Park at that time. Correct, Doc?
Yes.
Mhm.
So, what time did you have to wake up to be bused from?
Never had the
I
experience
never rode a school bus in all my years because I graduated from Hebert in 49. I went there
Okay.
in 37, and everything was on in that two
Right.
blocks
Well,
of
see, Doc, she's from up in East Texas, Jasper, Texas.
oh
So
my.
she don't know anything about the people down
We're
here.
not gonna talk about jazz. Don't even put it on the program.
So yes, they did build a Forest Park behind. It was nothing back there. I mean, matter of fact,
Nothing back
there
there.
was it wasn't even a road back there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was built so that we couldn't find it.
Building so that they cannot even find it. Yes. And sometime now I have to go in and look to see where Westbrook is. You don't, black people didn't pass by Westbrook going nowhere.
That's right.
We were going to Houston. That was US 90.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So so I'm originally from Beaumont, and I remember some of the trace of the school system because again, remember I was a South End boy, but my parents lived in the Pear Orchard, so I kind of had both. I was between back and forth between both settlements. So
Where about
and
Pear Orchard did your parents live?
where right it's in the right in the area where the current Mother Mercy Church is. That
Oh,
subdivision with Winston Drive, with
yes.
Principal Jackson lived across the street from us and all that.
Right across from Mother Mercy, where the Melton Y
That was the TB hospital.
TB Hospital.
That's right. And that wasn't a Mother Mercy then.
There was Mother Mercy was in the Pear Orchard on Broussard. Broussard, is that Broussard and an Olive or Broussard?
Right,
Yeah,
Bruce. Right, and that's where the graveyards are.
that's where the graveyards are.
Right.
That's where all my parents and my siblings are buried.
Right. So I tell people a lot of times, that Sarah Street stopped right there at
Third
the
Street stopped
middle.
when it crossed that track. We didn't have control,
Right.
but on our side of the track, that was the Blanches and the Heberts, and white people was not going to come and tamper with those settings.
Right. And Sarah Street ended at the TB Hospital, which is the old Milton YMCA.
Third Street ended right there. Yes.
That's right. And the streets guys was Seashells. I don't know if y'all remember that.
Oh,
Oh, I
wow.
remember Seashells. Yes.
Yeah, it was Seashell Streets.
Shell Streets
That's right.
and Dirt Streets.
And Dirt Streets.
Not a pay, and every ditch, every street had ditches.
Not one sidewalk.
Oh,
Wow.
we didn't even know what a sidewalk was. We didn't know what a sidewalk was.
Right. Everybody, we're talking to Dr. Richard Price, the historian of the Pear Orchard and the famous high school of Hebert High School. And we're just talking about the history of the Pear Orchard and the birth of Hebert High School back when back in the day. I always say that, but this is history, Beaumont history that a lot of us don't know about. And again, I know you shocked them, Doctor, when you told them Pear Orchards that that your dad and siblings graduated from Charlton Pilot High School. And I was born with blue and white blood, but I'm a graduate of Hebert, believe it or not. How about that?
What year did you graduate Hebert?
In 73. I graduated on Finette Road.
On Finette Road.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, back then we walked to school. We took the trail and you walked to school. There was no bus going there.
Okay. I don't ever remember a bus.
No. I had one bus, and we called a special bus. It came from Hollywood Village. You remember that?
I heard that there was a bus for Hollywood Village. In fact, my brother Othello used to drive that bus.
Right.
And sometimes he would go way out Old Port Arthur Highway, Edward Moore, towards Live Oak Cemetery, because there was a nurse just before you get to Live Oak Cemetery. He had to go and pick her up every morning.
Wasn't that back up in the Hillebrand area, wasn't it?
It was further south of Hildebrand, but he went through Hildebrand also.
Okay.
He was only about less than a mile away from the Live Oak Cemetery.
So, Doctor, I have a question. I know it sounds crazy me asking this question since you went to Blanchard, and I'm sorry, when you went to Hebert on Leela Street. I have a question, and I never could figure this out. I know Hebert was a sport, had sports, and it had football, they had basketball. I remember the barn because I went to Blanchard in the third grade when I left Carver. And I remember the barn, the gym. But
The gym.
where did, yeah, right. But where was the football field?
Okay. You see where the gym is?
Right.
Okay, that gym came along, I think it was my daddy got there in 47. He put in a request for a gym. That gym must have gotten there in 48.
Okay.
Between the gym and the street on the west side,
That's Goliad, right?
Goliad,
Right.
that was the football field between the back of the gym, the Goliad, Leela, and Sarah.
Okay. Was it a stadium? It was just a
There
field.
was there was one set of bleachers. There was no guest bleachers. Everybody, when visitors come, they just he took up one end of that bit of that stand, and the visiting team took up the other end of the same stands.
Wow. I was always wondering where. I knew you guys played sports, but I didn't know where you played it. Every time I would go, I drive by there before they rebuilt the school there. I would always ask where would they play ball, you know. So now I know now, yeah. But because then, as a young age, when I remember, I moved in the Pear Orchard as a little kid in 1959, and there was no street on Sarah. It was a dirt road, a little muddy dirt road, and it stopped right after Usan and Sarah. I guess he froze up again on us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Delisa, would you refresh his page, please? His daughter's with him. I'm enjoying this history. I
Oh,
love
me
knowing
too.
this. Yes.
I
And,
love history. I have
and,
a new respect when I ride through there. Trust me.
and guys who are watching or listening, let me let you know. I will ask some of your questions. If you have any questions, I will ask him if we can get him back on here again. Okay. So he should be here in a minute.
I can't believe there was no pears.
Well, some
Hey,
people have.
Tony, what do I need to do?
Okay, you refresh
Tony?
this. Yes, I'm here. I'm right
Okay,
here.
I'm looking at his picture. What do I do now?
Refresh this
Let me
page.
see.
In the top left-hand corner, there should be a circle with an arrow at
Oh,
the end. Uh-huh.
thank you.
Hit that. That's okay.
Okay.
And if not, you're gonna have to start over and reboot it. I mean, not
That
reboot the
log back
computer,
in.
but reboot the podcast.
Okay, so do I X? Okay, you're entering a broadcast studio.
Yes,
Plugging
Yes,
into the
that's
internet
it.
right.
works.
That's it.
I mean, I'm looking at me. We're still back where we were before. Oh, Lord.
Now he's on your laptop, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Connected to
people, we
Spectrum.
got a little difficult problem here, but we right there with you.
Do I X out and
Francis, do she X out and
Yeah, I would just X out and go back to the email and just come back in.
okay, I refresh it again.
Okay.
Let's check the camera and mic.
No, that has nothing to do with it.
Okay,
Just exit
okay.
and re-enter,
I'll
okay?
X out.
Yeah, just come back in, click that link again, and
While you trying to get back on, I'm gonna kind of answer some of these questions. Garfield Como, hey, classmate. Said you're telling me y'all practiced there when we went to the new JP Odom. So I didn't go to that school. I didn't go to JP Odom School on Virginia, and the stands was gone, and we walked from the trail to the Odom School. Okay, I understand what was going on. Deborah Williams, she's also a Hebert graduate. Let me see here. He has an impeccable memory. He sure does. And love hearing from him. He really can remember the things like that. He knows everybody.
Tony, is that something
Yes.
that you're supposed to do on your end?
No.
Is it-
No. No.
You
All
will enter
you
the studio as a guest. The host can add you to the
okay? Just
broadcast at
enter.
any
Press
time.
enter the broadcast room.
I mean, I don't see a link. What am I supposed to be hitting right now?
Enter.
Enter.
Should
Oh, I'm
allow
hitting.
you to just hit enter.
Right.
Nothing.
It should have his name and
Okay, I see his name.
uh-huh.
Oh,
And
So
it
now
should
I
enter
had to
podcast.
click on the name. Okay.
Yeah,
no. Yeah.
click on enter podcast.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Yep,
There we
that's it.
go. All right. We back,
All right,
doctor.
perfect.
I'm
Okay.
so glad you're back. I'm telling you. I'm glad you're back. And we didn't lose anybody. Everybody's still listening, still watching. So let's continue going on about the history of the historical Pear Orchard district and the history of Hebert High School. So, Doc, so
Okay,
when
about
did
I was
okay
about to say something about where we played our basketball,
go ahead,
which was before the gym
Jim.
was built in 48. Uh, there was an area right behind the principal's office, between the principal's office and is that Lavaca or Sarah? And on a dirt court, there was two goals put up, but for each game, somebody had to go out and chalk the lines because it was played on dirt.
Right.
And that's where we played our basketball games. Now, you talk about moving up to another class when we had to go over and play Charlton Pilot. Charlton Pilot always had a first class gym. They had a first class gym when it was on Carroll Street. And then when they closed down Carroll Street, they had it was called an armory across the street on College from
Right. I remember that.
of the old St. James Methodist Church.
Right.
In fact, that armory is still in use, but back then it was used as a basketball arena. And we thought we were in another class of people when we were invited to go to that armory for
Yeah.
basketball games.
Wow.
And of course, we never went to a white gym because of whites did not play blacks and vice versa in those days.
Mm. Francis.
Yes. You only played Charlton Pollard,
No, they play several schools
other schools. So
in the district.
was
Yes.
it within the district or outside?
Within the district. No, there was in the Purview League.
Okay.
Yeah, but before it was the UIL. I lost. There we go.
UIL, it was headquartered at Prairie View A&M
That's
University.
right.
That's what
Okay.
we for all our UIL activities.
Right. So at that time, the UIL was white and the Purview League was black in the whole
Yeah.
state
Oh,
of
that
Texas.
is quite interesting.
Right.
They both were called UIL, but I never saw a white person at the black UIL.
Oh, wow. Oh
So
my God.
so Dr. Price, you when you come back to Beaumont, in what year did you come back?
I came back in 1970,
In 1970.
August of 70.
And you went to Lamar University then. Well, before I go there, let me ask you this. I asked this question: since Hebert was in the South Park Independent School District at that time, and Charlton Pilot was in the Beaumont Independent School District at that time, so they had two the school districts.
At one time, there was 5.
Right. They don't know. Tell them the 5. I know about the 5.
Please tell me the 5 so I'll be educated.
I may not remember them all because I think that I heard that there at one time there was a 6, but there was a Goose Creek Independent School District, a French Independent School
Right.
District, a Beaumont Independent School District, a South Park Independent School District. I don't know if there was a Terrell Park Independent School District. I'm vague on that.
Yeah. But it was also those who are watching back in even in the 60s and 50s, there was 6 high schools in Beaumont. Well,
Yes.
actually 7.
Wow.
Right. You had South Park High School, you had Forest Park, you had
Uh-huh.
French High School, Beaumont High, Hebert,
High
and Charlton Pollard.
and Charlton Pilot High.
That's right. And they were all back in that day big 4A schools.
Wow.
Yes.
So yeah, and now we only have 2 high schools. So that tells you what happened.
Yes.
Okay.
So tell me, Dr. Price, how has the Pear Orchard evolved since the since it was come about?
Okay. It's still a very close knit community. We can almost be self sufficient. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we have our own churches, we have playgrounds, and we have schools, we have entertainment. But how it has evolved, okay, there are a few, I don't know how many, white families that live in the Pear Orchard community.
Hmm.
It's not unusual now. Of course, I must say that I don't know whether I should say it on podcast, but still, if I go in the Pear Orchard community and see a white person, male or female, female especially, down on the inside, what is she doing here?
Hmm.
Why is she here?
Hmm.
That just runs through your mind because this is something you're not accustomed to. White people never had a reason back then to say, I need to go into the black community. Other
Yes.
than sometimes to pick up black women that was going to come and clean their kitchens and uh, do their cooking. But you never saw white people, especially the white female, in the Pear Orchard community.
Hmm.
So now, some of us, if I call myself an old timer, I still have problems with it. I just don't let it surface, uh, because I've learned to acclimate.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, like some person told me, said, once you get, a white person told me, Dr. Price, you have a degree. And at that time, I had a vote on the South Park School District. You got it made.
Hmm.
You got it made. You got 2 things that white people will always respect. They will respect education and the power of the vote.
Hmm. That's powerful.
That's awesome. But
Hmm.
Dr. Hebert High School, I'm gonna go back to Hebert High School, was a predominant black high school.
All black.
Um, all black from day
Black.
from day one.
From day I never had any other race other than the black female or the black male as teacher and coaches at Hebert High School from grade 1 until you graduated.
And so your dad was also the principal of the high school at Hebert, and he was also the pastor of one of the local
The
churches.
West
In
Tabernacle Baptist Church.
right,
Okay.
He came into both of those positions. See, prior to 47, he was in the Beaumont School District as teacher. And in 47, I don't know which one asked first. I think Mr. Benson may have asked him first if he would come and take over principal of the Hebert High School. And maybe that same year, I still remember 47 or 48, he was asked to assume the senior pastor at West Tabernacle. At that time, West Tabernacle was in its old sanctuary, a wooden building. The sanctuary that you see there now, that was started by my father. Oh, yeah, but when did he start building that building? He had gone to Winnie, and there was almost a copycat of that church in Winnie. And he took me to Winnie, and he said, Fessa, this is the church that we're going to build in the Pear Orchard, which became the tabernacle for what is there now as West Tabernacle.
Oh, wow.
So how was it like being raised in the house of a pastor and a preacher? I mean, and a principal.
I can tell one story that would summarize all that. So there were people, my peers, at church, they would say Reverend Price. At school, they would say Professor Price. And they had other names depending upon where was the occasion for the contact. So one day I asked my dad, I said, Dad, these other people, they call you Reverend Price, they call you Mr. Price, they call you Professor Price. I said, what am I supposed to call you? Because I see you in all of these locations. Daddy had a way, he never answered a question, except that he asked another question. He asked me, what am I to you? I said, you're a daddy. He said, Fessa, I may not always be principal of that high school. I may not always be pastor of that church, but I will always be your daddy. So everywhere I saw him, I just said, Daddy.
Uh-huh.
I said, Daddy, yeah. I have the sister that's right under me. I've never asked her what did she call me because she went to school with him when he was principal at uh, Adams Elementary, which is
Wow.
across the street from the old G.W. Daniels Church.
Right. Well, what about a viaduct?
At Vada Vada, yeah, when that
Mhm.
viaduct was there. And I never asked her, what did she call? I'm pretty sure it was his daddy. That's what we all refer to him as,
So
daddy.
it was seven, eight of you guys, right? And you had seven, eight siblings, right?
6 boys and 6 girls.
Wow, that's a dozen.
He said he always wanted a football team and one substitute. Football team and one substitute.
But he got it. All 12, and all 12 of you went on to college and graduated from college and
10
went on
of
to
the
your own
12
careers.
that
Right.
started, 10 of the 12 that started college graduated. Yes. The only 2 that did not, I had a sister. She was the third, no, she was the 4th girl. And she had a medical issue, Down syndrome. And so my mother taught her at home and taught her how to knit. And she would knit Afghans and potholders. She would make up the beds. She would come over to my house and make up my bed. Made it up better than it was when I was in the military. There was one other youngster that did, the first youngster that my mother tried to have outside of the home, which was in a hospital. Uh, it lasted only about 2 or 3 days because back in those days, when a mother gives birth, they put the youngster in his own little crib. Well, for the rest of us, we stayed in our mother's breast until she came from. She always went to Port Arthur to have her children, and whenever she came from Port Arthur, in fact, at one time, I told my brothers, "Is it true that all babies come from Port Arthur? How come you ask that? Every time Mama comes from Port Arthur, she got a new baby." And they had to teach me then, what it takes to have a baby. I didn't know
Yeah.
what. I, back then, all my brothers were older than me.
I think we lost him.
Okay, well, I think we lost him again. We're gonna try one more time to get him back, and we're gonna move. Let's see if we can get him back one more time before he frees up. Let's go. Wow, that's some history. I'm going back to the comments, and I see we've got quite a bit of comments. So let me try to find something
And that is
There we go.
something. Yeah. Same thing. And he said, "Girl, if you want something done of the girls, you see how they're dressed every morning alike?" I said, "Yes, sir." "You see how your mama combed their hair?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "If you want something from those girls, go through their mama. But girls are different." And from that point on, I was taught you treat young ladies different than you treat young men.
So, what type of principal was he at the high school? I know he was disciplinarian.
Disciplinarian,
Yes, sir.
whether he was there physically or sometimes youngsters would want to go on Forsyth Street and do some gambling. Sometimes he would go and park his car on Forsyth. And youngsters say, we got to get out of here because there's Professor Price's car. And they would leave. His presence or that automobile, one or the other, signified that he was around.
Mm-hmm.
Very strict on his children, very strict on his daughters. In fact, this was in 40, the first year he was principal. We were coming to school, and she would have two of her girlfriends with her, and they were running a little bit late. And on the main sidewalk leading up to the high school, he pulled her out of the ramp and he whipped her right there on the ground. From that point on, she knew not to be late for school.
Mm.
A strict disciplinarian. Nobody ever questioned him. One brother tried it, the oldest brother, after he had been in the service. Actually, he came back home and he did something wrong. And whenever daddy was going to do a whipping, he would call the whole family together and sit them down in the living room. The living room was all across the house. And he would tell the brother, "Okay, get on your knees." And Archie Lee said, "Daddy, I have been to the military." Excuse me. I can't talk. I can't talk about that now. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So,
Get on your knees. And he said, "Daddy, I have been to the military and I think I'm beyond this." And he said, "You got 24 hours to make a decision whether you're going to get on your knees. If you choose not, pack your clothes Get out of this house and don't come back until you find out that I am 6 feet under.
Mm.
Daddy actually went and talked with several people in the community, including both Ty Hebert, including Brother Joe Guidry at the barber shop. And they all said, actually, you ought to bow down to your daddy. And Archie came back and he said, Fester, have you made your decision? And he said, yeah, what is it? He said, I will kneel down.
Mm.
He kneeled down. Daddy had a long strap. He whips a while, and then he talks a while. He opens the Bible and reads a while, and he goes back and whip again. And after about 2 or 3 rounds, he would say, ask your mama to have mercy on you. And mama would say, have mercy, please. And that's when he would stop. But the others of us, I caught less whipping than any of the others because I saw what he did to them, and I knew not to go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Francis.
Well, that's a rich part of history. I know that during those times, which I have older, mature family members and people that I've talked to around that time, and that was a very common practice. So, but it taught a lot of discipline. It eventually built up and made, those children become who they were. And in return, they had a lot of respect for themselves, a lot of respect for others in the community. And so it was just a way of life and taught from that time. So you are who you are today because of your upbringing. And we are so gracious, so very gracious to have you on our show tonight. And, just it's a blessing to just be in your presence.
Yes.
And
And Doc,
if I can say one other thing about
Yes.
the whippings, my third brother, he would get a whipping and then he would go back to school and he'd say, my daddy didn't whip me. My daddy didn't whip me.
Mm.
So from thenceforth, whenever he wanted to whip any of the boys, he would call in a peer of that youngster to come sit down in that living room. Now you go back to school and say what your daddy didn't do.
Mhm.
well, Dr. Price, it's been great just to visit with you and get some knowledge. You know, I always tell people all the time, they ask me, why did you name your podcast Knowledge is Power Podcast? And I said, well, it said in the word, it said a man will perish with of the lack of knowledge.
Amen.
Yes. So we enjoy listening to you, and I like to come back again and listen some more one day again. But tell us tell us one more. I don't want to end the show because I want to keep listening to your history. It's been so good, So how did now let's say that let's go back. How I knew and I grew up under Mrs. Levert Blanchett, Millette. Right. So I knew some of the history of Hebert High School from her because she told me where they lived on the corner of Leela and Paradise.
Paradise.
Right.
Big old house.
Right. Big old White House.
White House. Right there on the corner.
Right, and I would know some of the story because I was raised as a bulldog from Charlton Palace, so I know those stories. And again, we're going to have a historian on here to tell us about the South End and Charlton Palace as also. But how back in those days, everybody had to know everyone. When was the migration of the folks from Louisiana started migrating to the Pear Orchard?
Wow. This is getting almost personal because my mother was born in Crowley, Louisiana. That was in 1905, 1905, 1906. But there was a rider, what do they call him? The Red Rider, some kind of rider. And he went around terrorizing black families. On my mother's side, her mother was murdered by this, whatever they call this rider. And from the way I understand it, it was a week later before they went out into the country where they live and discovered their bodies. It was my mother's mother and one or two of her siblings. And so at that time, my mother's grandmother made the decision that they were going to leave Crowley. They came to Port Arthur and they settled down at the corner of Roosevelt, maybe in 9th Street. Don't quote me on that. I think it's Roosevelt and 9th Street in Port Arthur. And that was all right around the old Lincoln High School. And my mother was raised by her auntie at 845 West 11th Street, which since then the school district has bought up that property and built a gymnasium on top of it. But all of on the Barker side of the family, that's my mother was a Barker before she became a Price. They all came into Port Arthur from Crowley, Louisiana.
Mm.
And my brother on one occasion told me that Mama asked him to take him to Crowley. And he drove her to Crowley and went into a certain neighborhood. And my mother was able to say, I think I remember that tree. I think I can remember that tree. But she said, Othello, take me back home. So nobody else ever took us to Crowley and said anything about the Barker family while they were in Crowley.
But do you know about the migration of the Louisianans into Pear?
So at that time, yeah, there were several other families that migrated from Crowley and settled in Port Arthur. Most of them went to Port Arthur. It may have been because Port Arthur is closer to the waterways, and Crowley was close to some waterways. So they were accustomed to being around water.
Wow. Because I asked that question because I'm quite a few people that lives in quite a few families that lives in the Pear Orchard are from Louisiana, southern Louisiana, Crowley, Rain, uh, Opelousas, all those little places there. Yeah, right. And I just thought maybe that was their settlement. I mean, I know they all went to Port Arthur first, and then they settled. Yes, right. They went to Port Arthur first, and then come to settle in the Pear Orchard.
My mother went to Port Arthur. Her auntie that raised her belonged to 6th Street Baptist Church, the old 6th Street Baptist Church. And my mother became the pianist. My mother always played a piano. And Brother Joe Guidry had gone to 6th Street Baptist Church for some kind of something and came back and told my daddy, he said, Archie, I saw a young lady at 6th Baptist Church and you ought to meet her. And sure enough, he went and visited that church, and that's where he met my mother. And 12 children later, you know what happened.
Yeah.
But early on in their courtship, he told me when he would go to Port Arthur to visit Cleona, my mother, Her auntie sat in the middle. She sat on one side. My daddy sat on the other side. Now y'all talk.
Mm.
Mm.
And when they finished, okay, Archie, it's time for you to go on back to Beaumont. And she wanted to go. She wanted to go to college. She graduated #1 from Lincoln High School, right across the street from the. And on the other end of the block was her principal. I don't know if you've ever heard of Professor Sampson. Was her principal.
I read the history on him when we studied Lincoln.
Wow, I gotta ask that. I gotta ask Doc one more thing, and that's is how old is he? Because he can name the addresses from way back in 1935, and that's
I know. I
mean,
can't wait. I can't name my address from last year.
that's right. I'm scared to. I'm scared to ask him. He might know the phone number. To use his old phone number.
Mary, he said, I promise you I will take care of Cleona. And yes, he did. His wife was his #1 priority, even above his children.
Mm-hmm. Well, Doc, I have to ask this question because I was just saying when you froze up a minute, we had paused for a minute, that you knew the addresses, you knew the streets, and you knew. And I was saying scared to ask you your old phone number. You might tell me what your phone number was on Leela Street. So
On the party line.
on the party line.
Party line, you remember I only used that phone one time
Oh.
when Daddy said, tell Professor Pilot I'm not home. Professor Pilot, Daddy said I'm not home. That was the only time I used that phone.
Yeah, so
When the
tell us.
phone rang, no, we ignored it.
Yes,
Nobody was calling for any of his children.
right. So I'm gonna ask you two questions now. Who was the oldest and who was the smartest out of all the boys?
Wow. Okay. Archie Lee was the oldest.
Okay.
Archie Lee was the best set of brains the Price family ever produced.
Mm.
Archie Lee.
I
the
heard
oldest.
that. I heard that.
Archie Lee would read, photograph it. He could recall it years and years later. Archie Lee read intensively every day. He read everything. Even some of his students at Hebert School say he was a very avid reader. Archie Lee by far was the best set of brains in the Price family. Othello was the wisest. Othello always had a theorem, always had a reason, had a famous statement, for every deed under the sun, there is a reason or there is none. If there be one, go and find it. Otherwise, never mind it. That was Archie Lee.
No, Othello.
Othello, that was Othello. AJ had a good set of brains. And the one that y'all call Al.
Right.
Al was always right ahead of me. He was a year and 8 months older than me. And Al always gave me my directions. Even at Morehouse, Al made up, I call him AJ, everybody else call him Al. Even at Morehouse, AJ made up my schedule every semester. Told me what classes to take. There was one named CW, we called him Cop. Cop, I could borrow his suits on Sunday if I wanted to go to church. And Cop would always give me sometime a quarter, sometime a $50. I don't ever remember him giving me $1. But if I wanted to go somewhere, Cop would provide me with the resources. And I consider myself, I had more formal education than any of my other brothers or sisters. Maybe it took longer for me to learn. always had to have that teacher in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
But to this day, I spend most of my evenings in my office on the other end of the house with my computer. If you went there now, you're going to see several calculus books on the desk, on the floor. They're all open. You're going to see the Bible open. If I'm reading the prophet, you're going to see where I left off reading. I spend most of my time in the books, paper and pencil close by. Some of the calculations I will ask a software package that I use. If I don't feel like doing it by hand, I'll guide the software package to go slow because I want to see what I'm writing. And that's every night. So when people say the pandemic has kept them in, I'm already in.
Yes,
I'm already in.
right.
I go out to ride my bicycle every evening. I didn't ride today because of this podcast, but I still love my bicycle riding throughout the.
So, Doc, tell me this. What do you think of the Pear Orchard now? You think it's an opportunity for it to grow, to have a better opportunity in that part of the district?
It can grow for the same reason I said it's a very homogeneous group of people. We all tend to know everybody else. And whenever something touches one family, yeah, there's somebody else that knows immediately, about what's going on. So it's very homogeneous. It's not like sometimes you go into an area and you got a very diversified, and so you get all kind of conflicting ideas about what should and what should not be done. But in the Pear Orchard community, that homogeneity is the one thing that has kept us together. And I think it always will.
Thank you, Dr. Richard Price. Uh, Francis, you got any last words? Anything you want to ask Dr. Price?
Absolutely. Well, nothing I need to ask, just some comments. Again, I want to thank you for joining us. I love history and I love learning new things. And we're just so blessed to have you, especially with me being not a actual, I didn't grow up here. Okay.
Where did
So,
you grow up?
but I do love Beaumont and
Well,
I
you grew
hear
up in
great,
Jasper. I
yes,
think
sir.
in Jasper. Okay.
Yes, sir. And I hear great things about the Pear Orchard, but I am blessed to know the richness and the history that it derived. So
And your dad, Dr. Price, who started the richness and tradition of Hebert High School.
He started, okay, I can remember early on his telling me, even at the old high school, oftentimes he was not satisfied with the quality of the teachers in the classroom. And he said, I am going to build a program that will be worthy of emulation, not only in Beaumont, but across this country. And so names like Brother Minix, Brother Sanders, Brother Osborne, Levert Blanchett, Brother Sanders, he went out and recruited Brother Jackson. He brought Brother Jackson in from some town near Yoakum on the way to San Antonio. And he told Brother Jackson early on, one day when I am not principal of Hebert High School, you're supposed to be prepared to step in my shoes. And so that's why Professor Jackson was brought here as a coach, but he ended up as principal once my father passed.
Wow. I did not know that, but I knew by living across the street from Mr. Jackson, I knew he became the principal in 1959. From
59.
right, and he was the head coach of the football team at that time. Before that,
Yes. He was when he was first brought there, he, along with Professor Thomas succeeded my dad when my dad had left Adam to come to Hebert. Professor Thomas took his place as principal of Adams School. But Professor Thomas and Professor Jackson were my early coaches, along with Coach Mayfield.
mm-hmm.
Coach Mayfield.
Coach Mayfield. Wow, I've learned a lot here this evening as well. I'm sure my listeners has learned a lot as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
One thing about Coach Mayfield, a very stern disciplinarian. He kept a board, not a strap. He kept a board. And I will always remember the greatest whipping I never got. That was because this was the year we were going to play our football game with Charlton in Greenish Stadium. And we were playing Charlton Pilot. And Charlton Pilot was leading at halftime. They were leading not by 3 or 4 points. They were leading. And so when we went back to the dressing room, Coach Mayfield got his board and started paddling. When he got to me, one of the coaches said, "Coach, it's time to get back out on the field." And he said, "Okay, boy, I'm going to get you later." He never got around to that, and I never reminded him.
So, I mean, Hebert had even the student academic wise, it was a very they achieved a lot, and it has a tradition back in the day. It's called? I can't think of what I want to. Hebert is the best. I can't think of it. I wish someone should put a comment.
Dr. Price is making you look bad now,
Yeah,
Tony.
I'm telling you. Yes.
Well, it may some of that came out of that statement Professor Jackson put out. If it's got to be done by Hebert, it's got to be the
Be
best.
the best. That's it. That's what I was looking for. Yes. And, I'm looking at all the comments on everybody that's coming, and I learned something again tonight. I did not learn until tonight that the Jackson rollout that the drill team would do every game was called the Jackson rollout, and it was named after Principal Jackson.
Yes. And the young lady that instituted that, Lottie B. Thomas.
Right.
Lottie B. graduated with me. Her best friend, Bessie Mae Porter, was number 1. I was number 2. Lottie B. was number 3. And so Lottie B. started that drill team, and the rest of that is history.
Absolutely. I mean, even Pam has said, "Come on, cuz I know you can remember that. When Hebert does, it must be the best." And you're right. I can't. I went to 9 schools, so I can't remember all the mottos.
That was Lottie B.
Yes, ma'am. And also, Aunt Louise was there with you as well, right?
Who was Aunt Louise?
Aunt Louise. She was the teacher, but she was the biggest cheerleaders.
Oh, I remember Sister Taylor.
That's right. Aunt Louise Taylor.
Louise Taylor.
Yes.
Oh, she was a taskmaster.
Yes.
She was a taskmaster.
Right.
I never had her in the classroom, but yeah, you knew of her. Sister Taylor's, Alzina Barker, before she married and became a Granger.
Oh, I had her in the 3rd grade. I had to wear a bow tie every day.
That's Miss Granger. Miss Granger, I had her in the 2nd grade, and one interesting story about her. This was it must have been in November of some year. But she said she was going to give a test, a math test. And she said, if you don't make 70, you're going into the coat room. Now that means something else. So she gave the test. On the next day, she started calling names. I remember C.C. Scott come on to the coat room. And you heard the wailing and the so forth. Okay, Pluto Ranger, come on in the cloakroom. And finally she said, Richard Price, come in the cloakroom. Miss Barker, I made 80. The cutoff was 70. You're supposed to make 90. So I go in the cloakroom, and boy, I started getting jittery. And that's why I know it was wintertime. She said, pull down your pants. I said, my mama told me not to pull down my pants in front of ladies. Ugly look. Now she was not a Marilyn Monroe to look at.
Right.
Pull those pants down. I said, okay, I got on my LCDs underneath. So I said, I'm protected. I pulled my pants down, and then it was the LCDs. And you had 12 buttons across the back when you wanted to do a number 2. Unbutton those buttons. I said, oh my God. And I said again, Mama told you, boy, unbutton those buttons. And when she got that bare, whatever was there, that's what she whipped. And I knew right then, don't ever make under 90 because the dog was gonna whip you.
Yes.
So 90 was my
Yeah, right. I was a student of Mrs. Barker Granger, and the boys had to wear a bow tie or a tie to school in her class, and the girls had to wear a ribbon or in their hair.
Yes.
Right. And one day I was on my way walking to school. I remember I'm a South End boy, so I only went to Blanchard in my 3rd grade year just because of her. And I got halfway to the school and realized I did not have my bow tie on. I turned around and I cried and ran all the way home. I wasn't going to go to school without that tie because I knew I had to go to that closet.
Big disciplinarians.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Sure were.
Never had to call a policeman to the campus. Between my father and certain people on that campus, didn't have discipline problems, didn't have disrespect problems.
And that's a shame. And you think that we would need that right now with the students that we have today. It wouldn't even work.
It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work. Well, Dr. Price, we've held you up enough. I thank you so much and accepted my invitation. And with my co-hosts, LaDonna Sherwood and Francis Larkin. I know, Francis, you enjoyed that.
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed this evening.
And Doctor, I enjoyed it. I was thinking during last month, I said, I need to do another type of show, and I got to do something. And it had come up to me. It just flashed in my spirit. I said, hey, I got to know about the history of the Pear Orchard. I didn't want a history of Hebert High School. And I was trying to find someone to tell me about it who's still living, because all your classmates, they're almost gone now.
Almost gone.
Yes.
I have one still in Beaumont. I just found out who she was about 2 weeks ago.
Wow. So it's just 2 in your class. You're in the class of 1942. 49. Now, you did remember the race route in 1942 here in Beaumont, right?
43.
Right, 42 and 43.
Yes. That's another story.
That's another story. So, Doc, we're going to come back to that one day, and we sign you up, and I want you to tell us about the history of the Beaumont. I want to talk about the difference between Chorlton Pollard and Hebert, the two territories. And God, I just can't thank you enough for joining us and giving us this rich history of
My pleasure.
Orchard and Hebert High School and your family, because your family was a prominent family in our communities. And I'm glad I was able to give you some prop while you're still here with us.
Thank
So
you.
you have anything you want to share with us before we close out?
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome, Francis.
Yes. Again, thanks so much for being so gracious to join us this evening. I was blessed by the show. So thank you.
And your niece Pam said hello.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Pam.
No, I'm talking Dr. Price.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Price, your niece Othella's daughter said hi.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I hope to meet you all personally someday.
Sure will. I will stop by and visit with you. Hey, Delisa, thank you for your engineer experts.
You did great.
You did great. Thank you, everybody. And we thank you again for watching and listening to Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. We are on all the social media. Just look us up at searches at Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. Also, on Tuesday, we have the Ward 4 candidate, Chris Durio, going to be joining us. And on Thursday, we will have a mayor candidate, Robin Mouton, will be with us on Thursday. So we'll see you again on Knowledge is Power Podcast Live, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. Be sure to like and subscribe to all Knowledge is Power social media pages.